Traveling is about people and cultures. What do you think about Alaska? If you are like most people, you think it is cold and covered in snow. While Alaska is part of the U.S., its portrayal has Americans confused. The Riverboat Discovery cruise in Fairbanks, Alaska rivals Disney's combined Riverboat cruise and Epcot with its relaxed atmosphere and various cultural aspects.
Well, hello everyone, my name's Hannah. Welcome to Fairbanks, Alaska. Here we are at Riverboat Discovery.
The trip became more rewarding after I talked to Hannah. I will break this video into 3 stories about the cruise: the culture of native Alaskans, the huskies that pull the sleds, and the merging of 2 rivers. While the entire cruise was amazing, in all honesty, I did not fully appreciate or understand the cultural aspect until I had a conversation with Hannah. You could say I looked, but did not see. Hannah referred me to Hailey. Hailey is a wonderful teacher and taught me well. It is with pride and joy to present Hailey to introduce the cultural aspect.
Hi, I'm Hailey. We're in Fairbanks, Alaska. My background, I'm Yupik, Chupik, Inupiaq, and Athabascan, and I was born and raised here in Fairbanks. My parents originate from 2 main villages here in Alaska. One of the villages is up north about 184 miles from here, and the other village is located along west coast Alaska, 614 miles from here. Both my parents are native. There's different groups here in Alaska, so some of you might know it as like Eskimo or Indian. Those terms are like outdated. For the older generations of natives, sometimes they're okay with that sometimes, but Eskimo and Indian are not very specific, and there are many different groups within those words that group different people. So Yupik and Chupik, if you think of Alaska like this is Alaska. We're here in the interior, and that encompasses like all basically the middle part of Alaska. And up here you have the Inupiaq people, the Yupik and Chupik people, the Ununaq people on the Aleutian chain. You have the Tlingit, Haida, and Tsimshian over here, like kind of near Seattle. And then here's Canada. And so Eskimo refers to the term, or refers to the people of the Inupiaq and the Yupik people, and that bunches them together. And the reason why we don't like it is because Eskimo is not very specific. So Inupiaq and Yupik are very accepted. That's what we like to call each other. The translation of that is like the people or the real people. Same with Athabascan, which is associated with Indian. I don't consider myself Indian, not Indian. I'm Athabascan, and yeah.
We may know they were bone and stone societies. They told stories to pass down their traditions. What you probably did not know is they were nomadic, changing locations practically every month.
And then eventually they bumped into us, and they figured us out really quickly. They said, hey, these white people can't live very far from this thing called a store. Right? They built a store, they put a bunch of buildings around the store, and almost overnight these cultures adapted into a cash and money economy for the first time. And they kept up. And they started developing permanent settlements, what we now call villages, such as the Chena village over here to our right. Looks like Annette is over there with the catch of the day in hand. Good morning, Annette.
Well, good morning, everyone. Here I have a silver salmon, and once you folks turn around and come back upriver, I'll tell you how we cut and prepare this for our dogs to eat in the winter. And I'll tell you a little more about Fish Camp Lead.
Well, thank you, Annette. And also, let me just say, nice catch. That's a big salmon you got today. Wow. Well, isn't that a coincidence?
Wow.
and buried underneath, which is actually where they get their name. Caribou is a Mi'kmaq native word and roughly translates to the deer that paws at the ground or the deer that shovels. I also like to point out those big antlers they've got, because both the males and females grow those. This is the only species of deer where that normally happens.
Hi there. I know, he's like posing for us. Hello. Beautiful thing.
would allow them to catch enough salmon to support their families and their dog teams during the winter months. Now back on shore, the canvas wall tents is where they would stay each summer. And closer to me are the outdoor air drying racks. This is where they hang the salmon before they go into the smokehouse, the large permanent structure you see behind me. The smokehouse is a key to turning the salmon into a lightweight, dehydrated, fully preserved food source. Once the salmon was smoked, it would be stored in a cache, the little building next to the smokehouse. It's up on stilts to keep any animals from getting into it. But speaking of animals, the boxes you see between the tents are dog houses. We would bring our dogs to camp to act as a natural alarm if any larger animals came towards camp.
Right, you definitely don't want a bear or a fox sneaking in, taking all of your hard work. And speaking of working it, I can see you've done some on the fish out in front of you. What type of salmon did you say that was again?
Well, like I was saying, this is a silver salmon. And here in the interior of Alaska, we get 3 types of salmon. We get a single run each of the king in silver and 2 runs of the chum. Because the chum are slightly lesser quality, we usually reserve them for the dogs. And the process I've started here is a basic dog food cut. I started by removing the head and separating the 2 fillets from the backbone, leaving them connected at the tail so I can then hang them up on the drying rack. There's still meat left on this backbone, and since nothing is ever wasted in our culture, we would feed this to the dogs at camp. If this were a head of a higher quality salmon, it would be made into fish head soup for our elders.
Okay, Annette, fish head soup. What does that taste like?
I don't know, Skylar. I'm not old enough.
Right, okay. I'll check back with you here in about 40 years. Now, what is it that you're doing with those fillets right now, Annette?
Right now, I'm scoring the salmon, which is making diagonal cuts through the flesh down to the skin. Scoring creates more surface area on the fillet, so it will hang up here on the drying rack until it stops dripping and has a nice sheen or glaze on it. And then it can go into the smokehouse. Keep in mind that every family and region have their own preferences and techniques for smoking salmon. This process is for the dogs, so once the salmon is inside the smokehouse, it would be rotated around inside for up to 2 to 3 weeks. And while your guides and I are glad to show you around the village and introduce you to our culture. This village is a replica of the original Chena village Captain Jim visited while running freight. When the Chena village became inaccessible by boat, it largely ceased to exist. So Captain Jim and his family created this living museum you see here. This village contains some 100-year-old cabins and also many artifacts that are carefully relocated here from the original site. All of the replicated cabins were built by hand by native craftspeople using the traditional tools.
Born and raised here in Fairbanks, but my parents are from a small village along the lower Yukon River called Caltag. I just graduated my senior year at F.E. Cochrane Charter School, which is a local high school here in Fairbanks, just 3 months ago. And in my free time, I like to make beaded earrings.
Modeling an Athabascan Yukon-style women's winter parka. It is all traditional, except for that zipper going down the middle. We just have that there so we can get in and out of the parka quickly on hot summer days. Traditionally though, it'd be sewn together pullover style. The main body of the parka is beaver, and as you can see, it's sheared for design. It's trimmed with calfskin, river otter, and timber wolf. But now, she's going to show us the sunshine ruff. Wow. Now you see why it's called the sunshine ruff. It does represent the sun. The outer part of the ruff is timber wolf, and closest to her face is Wolverine. And like I said at our first stop, Wolverine is always so closest to the face because of that natural oil. Any leftover piece from making that ruff we made into these tassels. And each family has their own unique design. For instance, the artist that made this, her name is Dixie Alexander. Her family's from the Fort Yukon area, and her family's pattern is the wild rose pattern.
But in the summertime, we're pretty lucky too, because we get to go out and play with puppies, and anytime you do that, it's always a great day.
This isn't just playtime, there's a degree of training involved. How does that work when these guys are too young to fit into a harness?
Well, you know what we want is we want to establish what we call a trust and be trusted relationship as soon as we can, because of course when we're out on the trails, we're going to depend on them for their instincts and abilities, but when we're home, they're going to depend on our care and guidance. And so it's important that that relationship starts the day they're born, and they trust us, and they want to follow us on adventures, which is a perfect opportunity for us to help them develop their self-confidence, which we do by challenging them to overcome obstacles. Like today, the challenge is make it across that log. And they learn something from that. And what they're learning is that we're not asking them to do anything impossible, but we'll always be there to help them. If the going gets tough, and that pays big dividends when we're on the trail together later on in life. The younger dogs are learning a couple things. Number one is they're learning just to listen to my voice, which is very important, of course, when we're teaching commands. But the second thing they learn is to always follow the example of those older dogs, because those are the dogs that ultimately bring us all safely home, and they need that skill when they go in harness for the first time. Well, you know, what we want for these guys is to have their first run not only be a success, and that the pups enjoy it, but also that they really want to do it again and again. And so we want to make sure that, first of all, they're big enough, strong enough to hold them. And we can see those little guys aren't ready yet, but they will be in about 8 months. But the second thing we want to know, of course, is they're following the example those older dogs are setting, because those are the ones that will be teaching them when we're out on the trail. But the final thing we want to see is something called the instinct to pull, which is the love, joy, and desire to have to run as part of a team towards the grace so that I have control today.
All right, he gives them the command, and away they go. And notice, folks, how much quieter it just got. And all the energy and enthusiasm turns right into dog power.
These guys look beautiful. They understand the strategy.
You'll notice he doesn't have any bits in their teeth. There's no reins at their back. He doesn't have any physical means of controlling that team. It's all that trust and be trusted relationship, so the dogs will listen to your verbal commands.
The four-wheeler, it's nice and tight, every dog is doing their job. After give them a command, I'll call you the way back.
You have to listen to them and their instincts just as much as they need to listen to you. Because one of the things Grant was most renowned for was his ability to safely lead teams through very dangerous trails, and that's part of why Susan and Dave held on to his legacy so much. During that last year of Susan's life, they actually got it written down and published into a beautiful children's book I'd like to tell you folks about in a minute. Looks like Dave is finishing up his run here.
These guys are the ones who really deserve the praise, because of course they do all the hard work. So, excuse me, after every run, every dog gets a pat on the head, and that's just like us.
Right, and I guess these guys just kind of want to hop at a gym class and cool off in the showers on a hot day like this.
Have you heard about water properties having irreconcilable differences? We started our cruise on a river of water that looked nearly black. We are accustomed to seeing clear, tea-like rivers. Many rivers in Alaska are supplied with glaciers. These rivers contain excessive earth sediment, yielding a cloudy green or coffee and cream brown appearance. The difference in composition, flow rate, temperature, and density prevent the two rivers from mixing when they initially meet. The paddle wheel cannot sufficiently churn the water to produce the coffee and cream appearance or mix the waters. Notice how the rivers meet? The contrast is so obvious, we see the differences are irreconcilable. I would like to conclude that Jim and Mary started Riverboat Discovery cruise 73 years ago, and a decade before, Alaska became the 49th state of the U.S. His wife greets the boat at 97 years of age, and their children and grandchildren took over and operate the business today. Earlier, you heard the names Susan Butcher, David Monson, and Granite. She was the first person in history to win the Iditarod in 3 consecutive years, as well as the first musher to win 4 out of 5 sequential years. David, Susan's husband, runs the kennel. Together, they wrote a book about Granite. I would like to tell you the story about Granite, but that would mean a whole new video. Suffice it to say, it is a story that will warm your heart and renew your faith in humanity.
You know, one of the things that's really meant the most to me over these last many years now is when I've been able to share the story of Susan and Granite with other families. What means a lot is, you know, how much children will always identify with him. And I think anyway, it's because Granite was the little dog that nobody believed in, but because Susan had faith in him, and I remember them working so hard together until eventually he became the greatest lead dog in history. So,
You know, Granite lived to be 17 and a half years old before he passed, even after his near-fatal heart infection. And he ran over 40,000 miles in his lifetime. Wow. These dogs are capable of great things as long as you take good care of them.
Thank you, Hailey, Hannah, and Charlie, for making this video possible.